Well, welcome to episode 13 of Baba Yaga's Magic, Liminality and Slavic Magic. Now, most magical traditions contain concepts about magical times and magical spaces and places. But did you know that Slavic magic has some very special rules about magical times and places? Rules that you can incorporate into your own magic practice wherever you are in the world. I'm talking about the concept of liminality. In this episode, we'll be discussing that idea of liminality, how you can identify liminal times and spaces, and some of the old traditions in Slavic magic for working with liminal times and places for protection and power in your life. Are you ready to step into the betwixt and between with me? Well, come along. This episode is all for you. But before we dive in, I want to tell you a way that you can get a free spell kit from the Parlor of Wonders. Each month, we give away a different beeswax candle spell kit to one lucky winner. We've been doing it for the last several months, and it's been so much fun to see you guys entering, getting into this contest, and picking a winner. It's been so much fun. We pick at random, but it's fun to see who wins. These candle spell kits include everything you need to cast a beautiful candle spell. They include a beeswax figural candle, a spiritual oil, herbs, complete step-by-step instructions, and oftentimes there's something a little more. There's no purchase required to enter into this giveaway. Anyone, anywhere in the world can enter to win this gorgeous beeswax candle spell kit, but you just must be over 18. Simply go to magicgiveaway.com, enter your email, and you'll be entered in the contest. We start fresh every month. So if you did it last month and you didn't do it this month, you got to get in it to win it. So go over to magicgiveaway.com, just enter your name and your email, and you'll be entered in the contest, and maybe you'll be the lucky one that wins. All right. So let's talk about the liminal. What is the liminal? If you want to understand Slavic magic, you have to understand the concept of liminal. Liminal sort of means in between. The liminal rests outside of what is familiar and really resides in what is unknown, unusual, unexpected. There are times that are liminal, like a dusk. At dusk, that's a time that's not really day, it's not really night, it's in between the two. Or the time between childhood and adulthood. You're in between. Are you a kid? Are you an adult? These are times, an example of times that are liminal. I'm going to be talking about more in just a minute. There are also spaces that are liminal. The edge of a field as it blends into a forest, or the threshold of a doorway that's neither inside nor outside the house, or the crossroads leading in new directions. Whenever you leave what is known and step into the unknown, you are getting into magical spaces. These liminal times and spaces are truly powerful. They open you up to all kinds of possibilities and are a passageway to traverse between the worlds, the world of the material world and the world of spirit. But liminal spaces are also considered to be risky and unpredictable. So they're a bit capricious when you enter into them. In most Slavic magic systems, we want to protect ourselves when we go into liminal spaces, but we as witches and magic makers want to enter into these liminal spaces because we have access to that spirit realm. So let's talk about what liminal literally means. So if I look up liminal in dictionary, which I did, because I'm like, what does the dictionary have to say about liminal? Because I know, what I know from experience, but what does the rest of the world know about liminality? So liminal can mean occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary or a threshold. I was at a liminal space between past and present, right? I was in that space between past and present. That's an example. Liminal can also mean relating to a transition or being at the beginning stage of a process. The example they give, that liminal period when a child is old enough to begin following basic rules, but is still too young to do so consistently. So it's about being in between. All of us have experienced liminality in our life. You cannot live your life without experiencing liminality. For example, when you're no longer a child, but you're not yet an adult, you're in a liminal space. Or maybe you've had an experience of being at a beach and standing on the sand, but then the water comes and splashes over your feet. That's a liminal experience and a liminal space. Or you've watched the sun as it goes down over the horizon, and we have twilight and dusk, or the sun coming up where it's night and then we see dawn breaking. Those are also liminal times. So we have all experienced liminality, and we have maybe not registered that it is actually something that is quite powerful for magic. Liminality can occur in space, places, right? A place that is neither here nor there, or when one space blends into another space, or something that's on the edge of something. Liminality can occur in time, as we mentioned before, when day is changing into night, or vice versa, or when we're going through a life stage where we haven't quite left one state and haven't quite entered into the new state. The end of one day and the beginning of the next. A very potent and powerful and filled with lore time, a liminal time, is midnight, right? We've all heard it's the witching hour. Well, what does that mean? We're at that liminal space where one day is officially ending and the new day is officially starting, and midnight is that liminal space between the two. Liminality is ambiguous by nature. It doesn't fit neatly into any slot. And that's also a time where things can be transformed, where things can change. When folklorists use the word liminality, they often use it to talk about rites of passage and that feeling you have as you go through the rite of passage where you've left your old life behind, but you haven't quite entered into the new life, right? As you're going through some sort of initiation, for example. You don't have the same status that you had before the ritual, but you have not completed the ritual and gone into what is to come. So you're in this odd, eerie, in between place where you're neither one nor the other. And that's liminality. Think about another example of liminality. You've probably experienced this where you have finished school, for example. You graduated officially, you finished all your classes, but you haven't yet had your graduation ceremony. And for that little time, you're not a student anymore, but you're not a graduate either. You're in between. There's a change that's in progress, and that is liminal time. And this anthropologist, Victor Turner, wrote an essay on this called Liminality and Communitas. And he said that in those liminal spaces that are neither here nor there, they are betwixt and between the positions assigned and arrayed by law, custom, convention, and ceremony. And this is the key thing that he said that is so powerful. He said, they exist in a realm of pure possibility. It's possibility. When you enter into the liminal, you're entering into possibility. And what does a magic maker want more than anything is to access possibility, to create changes, to make magic, and so on. So liminality is about thresholds and transformation. When you're crossing a threshold into something new or going through a gateway, it's a moment of change. You can feel it. And if you're aware and paying attention, you can feel it. I mean, think about the excitement when you'd finished all your classes at school and graduation was coming and everything felt very electric and exciting and daunting at the same time. You were about to embark on a new part of your life, a new chapter. So all of that happens many, many, many times in our lifetimes. And so when you start to think about that concept of liminality, we start to see the magic and the power of it. We see this concept of liminality. It's not exclusive to Slavic magic. It really is across the board as a power place. I mean, cultures all over the world have seen these liminal places and spaces as being powerful. But there are some specific ones and traditions and places and rituals and so on that are very specific to Slavic magic. So let's talk more generally, though. A last thing I want to share with you about this is this. We see liminality really being brought in as a magical transition in fairy tales. Fairy tales and folk tales are powerful transmitters of information. They transmit information when people have to keep magic underground, when there's witch burnings in Western Europe, when a new religion like Christianity comes in and you have to hide your pagan traditions for fear of repercussion, you can hide your information encoded in fairy tales and folk tales. So let's think about a couple of really well-known fairy tales that we know. For example, Sleeping Beauty or Snow White. Now, I'm sure you've heard of those stories, right? They are steeped in liminality. Both Sleeping Beauty and Snow White are in this liminal space of being asleep for years and years and years, right? They are not dead, but they're not alive either. They're in a liminal sleep. So how does this apply to Slavic magic? Well, Slavic magic really puts, I would say, liminality at the forefront of magic. It's very prioritized in magic, and there are a lot of rules and admonitions and spells and all kinds of rituals that are associated with liminality. So let's talk about a few of them. We're not going to get to all of them because that would take many, many episodes, but let's talk about a few of the really important ones. The first one is the threshold of a door. The threshold of a door is the space where the door sits, your front door, your side door. It's not quite inside the house and it's not outside the house. It's a liminal space. When you work with the threshold, you have to be very careful in Slavic magic because it was a place that traditionally people might bury their dead under the threshold. It was a space that you had access to the spirit realm. So in old times, in old traditions, they might bury their family members underneath the threshold of their home. So because this space was considered liminal, you might see in a traditional chata or a little hut, you might see things like carvings over the door or paintings over the door. There might be sheaves of stinging nettles or a knife blade or pins or needles stuck into the doorpost, or mugwort might be tucked in there, or a horseshoe might be put over the lintel. And these were not only to protect ourselves in the house from malicious spirits coming in, but also to protect the ancestors that would have been buried underneath that threshold. Now, if you look at old movies or traditional movies with Slavic people in old traditional village houses, when they come over the threshold, they would cross themselves. The cross is an ancient pre-Christian symbol of protection. Of course, it got co-opted into Christianity and became, a Christian symbol, but long before Christianity, that was a symbol of protection. So in crossing the door, in crossing that threshold, you would cross yourself to protect yourself as you were going over that threshold. Not only that, but there were rules about things that you would and wouldn't do over a threshold. You would never, forbidden to shake hands or conduct business over a threshold. You either come in the house or someone goes outside, but you would not have a conversation, shake hands, give someone something, or conduct business over a threshold. It's a liminal space. It's too tricky. It's too ambiguous. It's got lots of potential for things to go awry, to pick up some bad luck or pick up some, trickster energy. And so you would never do that. So you don't linger over the threshold. You don't pass objects. You don't shake hands. Those are the things that you don't do over a threshold. However, You can use the threshold as a liminal space in other ways. So if you were doing a cleansing, for example, with some water over someone who was ill in the house, and you couldn't take the water out to a faraway place, you could pour that water over the threshold to be taken out into the spirit realm and to take that illness away from the person. You could also do things like scatter poppy seeds at your threshold to prevent malicious people from coming in, or tricky people or enemies or things like that, or even evil spirits. Scattering poppy seeds will confound them. They'll have to sit there and they have to count all these little teeny tiny poppy seeds. And so that will keep trickster energy out. Another way that you can work with that threshold energy is to take a small piece of earth, because remember, our ancient ancestors had dirt floors. They didn't have fancy floors. And so on this dirt floor, you could take a piece of earth from that threshold of your home and take it with you when you were traveling. When you're going out amongst the world of strangers, you would have a piece of this very, very powerful earth from your home that would protect you. So that would be a very powerful talisman. So good things that you can do with it, but also you want to make sure you don't conduct your normal business over a threshold. Too liminal, too tricky. The energy is too tricky there to do normal material world things. Now, another type of liminal space that's talked about in Slavic magic are the edges of spaces. So the edge of a forest, for example, the edge of a forest where the fields end and the forest begin, were seen as liminal places of magic. This is where you could encounter spirits or otherworldly beings, or the wildness and the spirit of nature. Banks of a river or banks of a pond are also liminal space. If you think about the rusalki, the water spirits who live in the water, but then emerge and then go onto the land and the fields to bless the fields and then go back to the water again. This space was a very liminal space where they can move out of the water and into the land. So it was also a space where you could encounter the spirits of the rusalki. Even something like the edge of a city or a village was seen as a liminal space, like the outskirts of something would be seen as a liminal space that you could work with, or if you had to move through it, just move through it quickly. One of the most magical liminal spaces is the crossroads. If you think about a crossroads is truly between here and there, right? It's not there, it's not there, it's in between. And a crossroads, we have lots of different opportunities to go into different directions. So we have to take a risk when we go on the crossroads in just the material realm. Are we taking the right road, right? So as a symbolic place or a magical place, it's a place where you can do all kinds of magic. And I have a whole chapter in Baba Yaga's book of Witchcraft about working with the crossroads, because there's so much magic that can be done there and so many traditions about working in that way. You can work with it in a way to empower your spells and divination, but you want to be careful because it is a tricky location, a liminal space, where if you are not paying attention or not taking proper care, things might go wonky for you. So let's talk about the things that you don't do at a crossroads. You don't eat or drink at a crossroads. Why? Because there's spirits that lurk around the crossroads as a place that attracts spirits, and good spirits or tricky spirits. And if you eat something or drink something at a crossroads, the spirit might attach to the food or the drink and hitchhike a ride as you drink or eat it. So you don't want that. You also don't want to take out and show money at the crossroads, because it's an insult to the spirits of the crossroads. If you take out your money, but then you don't leave the money for the spirits of the crossroads, they might attack your prosperity. So keep your money in your pocket, except for any money that you're going to leave as an offering. You don't want to yawn at a crossroads. Yawning, you know why we cover our mouth when we yawn? Not because, well, partly probably because we don't want to look in everybody's mouths, right? But we cover our yawns to prevent a spirit from coming into our body, right? Any random spirit. So cover your yawn. If you're going to yawn at a crossroads, make sure to cover your yawn, because this is a place where lots of spirits congregate. And you don't want to spit in a crossroads. If you spit in a crossroads, it's like insulting to the spirits, number one, that live there. And number two, you're leaving what we would call in hoodoo a personal concern. You're leaving a piece of your DNA, a piece of you there. That's not good. A spirit could take that energy of you and become attached to you. So we don't spit at a crossroads. So why do we even go in a crossroads? Do we want to go in a crossroads? It seems like there's a lot of danger in a crossroads. Well, a crossroads is a very powerful place for magic. And if you follow these few rules, they're really not that many. Don't yawn, don't eat, don't show your money, don't spit. I mean, we can all do that, right? Then we can go to a crossroads and perform very powerful magic. So first things first, rules for the crossroads. Go to a crossroads with a purpose. If you're not traveling through, like if you're just hanging around, that's not a purpose. So either you're traveling through because you have to travel through the crossroads, or you're going there to do magic, one or the other. We don't loiter at a crossroads. It's not appropriate, and it's kind of impolite to the spirits there. When you do any magic at the crossroads, you do your magic and then you turn and you don't look back at your magic. Once you leave an offering or leave some spell or do something like that, you leave it and you don't look back. So what kinds of spells can we do at the crossroads? Oh, so many. Like I said, there's a whole chapter of them. So if you are interested in these spells, check out Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, because they've got all the details on how to do these spells. But we can do spells to let go of things. Like we might have sadness or grief that we want to let go of. We can release and let go of that sadness and grief at the crossroads. We can do spiritual healing at the crossroads. We can leave disease and get rid of it and leave it for the spirits to deal with. We can do divination at the crossroads. There's love divinations that we can do at the crossroads. We can also do magic, protective magic at the crossroads, like protecting a community from illness or removing illness from ourselves or the illness of a loved one. We might have trouble in our house, and if we want to get rid of that trouble, we can release it at the crossroads. We can remove a curse, we can banish poverty, we can make wishes, we can leave negativity there, we can gain wisdom and psychic knowing, or we can even meet a powerful spirit at the crossroads. These are all things that we can do at this very, very powerful liminal space. Another liminal space unique to Slavic magic is the peach, the wood stove, right? The wood stove, the peach, was a place that was had access to the spirit realm. The fire was thought to be the realm of the spirits. And so the peach, the wood stove, the fire of the wood stove, was thought to be a liminal place of transition from our world of the living into the world of spirit. Now, how does this translate? Well, it translates into the peach with its chimney being a mode of transportation, a highway of transportation, not a mode of transportation, a highway of transportation for witches. This we also find in Western Europe as well, where witches were believed to go into the oven and fly out the chimney to their gatherings. The reason we have witches on broomsticks in sort of modern culture is because the tools near the fire, the poker, the fork that was used to pull out heavy pots, and of course the fire broom, were all seen as objects for a witch to fly on. She would jump on that poker and fly out the chimney, right? So the peach or the fireplace or the hearth are also seen as a liminal place. Last one, the lasnia, the bathhouse. Now, when we think of bathhouse or sauna, we might think of these deluxe spa experience. You go to the spa, you get a massage, but the lasnia or the bathhouse or the sauna is something that existed for thousands of years. And it was not a luxury place. It was a place that you would have in your home, not even attached to your home, outside of your home, a little hut, a bit distant from the house. You might have one for the whole village, or you might have your own personal one if you were a person who was well-to-do. This little hut would be dark and like a garage. You know, if you think about walking into the garage, it's a little spooky sometimes walking into a garage. It's not a it's not an inhabited place, but people use it. So it's a liminal space, right? It's a little bit between a house and it's not outside. It's this liminal, spooky place. So if you imagine this little windowless wooden hut, a bit distant from the houses in the village, it's dark and musty outside, and there's simply a little stove with rocks in the corner for the heat, and there's some shelves for people to sit on, maybe some benches. And now you have to go into this place, remove your clothing, remove your protective talismans and everything that protects you in day-to-day life, and sit and steam and clean yourself. So the Loznia was seen as this liminal space. It's a little outside of the ordinary. It's not one thing or another. And if we've ever been into an uninhabited building or a garage that nobody goes into very often, you have that feeling of what liminal spaces feel like. So the magic of the Loznia goes back thousands of years, and people were making, they have, archaeological evidence of people making dugouts and tents and huts and sacred places where they would do healing rituals and work with water and fire and air and earth to cleanse the body and the soul. So the Loznia is seen as this magical liminal place where you can do divination, you can do spells, and so on. Now, there were lots of rules about using the Loznia because it's a liminal space. The bath always had to be done during the day. You were doing your steaming during the day. The number of participants that went into the room had to be odd for good luck. So you wouldn't have an even number of people participating. And you'd have to make an offering for the Bannock. The Bannock is the spirit of the Loznia. He's a little hairy guy, just like the Domovec, who lives in the Loznia, and he's got a bad temper. So if you don't treat him with respect, then you would get in trouble and he might, scald you or do something naughty. So those are some of the liminal places. Now in a minute, I'm going to tell you about the liminal times. But before I do that, I want to tell you about the amazing full moon spell kit and workshop and new moon candle spell kits, and something very special about that. You might know about the amazing full moon spell kits and workshops and the new moon candle spell kits, workshops, and services that I create every month just for you. And they're available for only 1 week, and then they go away forever. But did you know that there is a way that you can subscribe? Yes, we now have subscription services for the full moon spell kits and workshops and the new moon candle spell kits, workshops, and services. If you've ever wanted to participate in the new moons and full moons, but missed that window of opportunity to get one, you know how disappointing it can be. But we have a solution. You can subscribe to the full moon spell kit and workshop and the new moon candle spell kit, workshop, and services, and get a guaranteed spot at the front of the line to be the very first to get yours sent out to you. Whenever you sign up for a new moon or a full moon subscription, you'll just get charged for 1 month, that month that's coming up, and you'll be the first to get it when it goes live. So each month you'll be charged on the same day of the month you subscribed, and will only be charged for that next kit or service. Not only that, but if you subscribed, you get the spell at a discount. There's no minimum number of months to stay subscribed. You can subscribe and unsubscribe. It's no problem. It couldn't be easier, but it's so convenient. You get it sent to you. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to set your timer. It just automatically happens. So if you'd like to sign up now and get in on the next spell that's coming up, go to fullmoonspell.com for the full moon spells and newmoonspells.com for the new moon spells, and look for the subscription service and sign up today. All right, so let's talk about liminal times. There are liminal times of life, and these are very much times that we find lots of magic in Slavic magic. For example, pregnancy and childbirth. Pregnancy and childbirth are liminal times. The baby is, you're not no baby, but the baby isn't here yet. We're in between. So there were spells that were done all throughout pregnancy and childbirth to protect the mother and to protect the baby. One of the ways that we would do that is by making a motanka. Motanka is the magical doll that is rolled, and it's the house of the spirits, the ancestor spirits that are designed to protect you. A newborn baby that wasn't yet baptized was also in a liminal space. And so a motanka would be placed in the cradle before the child was born. And then after the child was born, it would stay there to protect the child. Maybe you are being initiated into a group, the group of warriors or the group of healers or some other tradition. That would be a liminal time that would have special rites and rituals around it. Being engaged, you're not single and you're not married, you're engaged, was seen as a liminal time when people were more vulnerable to picking up the evil eye or curses or problems, right? Dying was another time of a person's life when they would have liminal time. It would be considered liminal time. So there were rituals that were performed to assist the dying person's transition and to make sure that it was easy and that they were protected. For example, people would not do, when someone in the home was dying, they would keep the talking to a minimum or keep everything very peaceful and quiet because they wanted them to have peace and they wanted them to be protected. People would come and visit the dying person, for example, and have a little opportunity to say goodbye and make peace with them. So all those important points in your lifetime were considered, they were liminal times where there were spells and protections and charms and all kinds of things. There's also, as we mentioned at the top of this show, liminal times of day, dusk, dawn. Those are examples, real examples of liminal times of day, dusk and dawn. Once clocks came about, midnight then became a liminal time of day. That's a more recent thing because people didn't measure time by a clock. Only people with wealth could afford a clock. So midnight as the witching hour is a more modern concept, but definitely is a liminal time. There's also liminal times of the year. Winter solstice, when the sun is at its least shining light on the day. The days are the shortest and the nights are the longest. Winter solstice was seen as the end of the time of the waning sun and the beginning of the time of the waxing sun. So there were lots of rituals and protection rituals and activities and so on. Kol Yada is the celebrations that take place around the winter solstice. And these were meant to protect people from bad things and to bring in good things for the coming year. Summer solstice and the celebration of Kupala is also another liminal time when the sun is getting stronger and stronger. And then summer solstice, now the sun is going to the days are going to get shorter and shorter. The sun is going to get weaker. And so that was also seen as a time of a liminal time that would have lots of rituals associated with it. So now that you get the idea of what liminal times and liminal spaces, pay attention to the liminal times and spaces in your own life. Are you going through a life transition? Then do some extra protection or do some extra magic. Look for liminal spaces to do your magic. Could be the crossroads, could be a threshold, could be the edge of the water, could be the edge of the forest. Look for those liminal spaces to do magic. Look for liminal times of day to do your spells. Do a spell at dawn, do a spell at dusk, do a spell at midnight. These are great ways to work with the idea of liminality. Enjoy working powerfully in the liminal to simply protect yourself in these very, very special and powerful places and times of magic. Well, that about does it for this episode of Baba Yaga's Magic. If you would like to get even more info about Slavic magic, then check out the Learn page over at Parlor of Wonders, where you will find a ton of resources, including workshops, blog articles, past podcast episodes, and the way to join me live over Zoom for the Magic Q&A Tea Party every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. Just go to parlorofwonders.com and click on the Learn tab to see all the goodies that are over there. I want to say thank you to all the Spell Squad members out there who have subscribed to and shared this podcast with your friends. Thank you to the fabulous folks who have left reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. And thank you to Gilles Navarre for production and engineering. And thank you to you for joining me. I'm looking forward to next episode when we'll be learning about Svyata Mati Zemlya, Holy Mother Earth. Until next time, this is Madame Pamita and Baba Yaga saying Za Mahyu to magic. And may all your stories have the happiest fairy tale endings.